Welcome to another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Today, my guest is Angela Crawford. Angela has over 20 years of experience as a licensed psychologist. She is deeply interested in the interconnection between veganism and emotional well-being. Angela is currently conducting research and interviews for a book on the emotional, social, and spiritual impacts of a vegan lifestyle. Her work as a psychologist and transformational coach includes providing holistic and transformative approaches to address anxiety, stress, and trauma while nurturing body, mind, and spirit. Angela is also a vegan educator and advocate, empowering people to choose veganism for health, emotional thriving, the planet, and most of all, as an expression of compassion for all sentient beings. Stick around. I want to introduce her to you. Hi, Angela. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. It's great to be here.
So it's very nice to have you here, and you have some very interesting information we're going to talk about. But first, tell me where you're at.
Okay, I'm in upstate New York, an area called Binghamton, New York. One of the State University of New York is there, so that's where I live.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm originally from New York, Brooklyn, New York, born and raised.
Wow.
And now can you share with us about your journey into veganism?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I actually grew up in Iowa in the Midwest, and I had no idea about factory farming. Like many of us, I saw the cows out in the field. I really had no idea what happened. And like most people, I ate a very meat and dairy centered diet for most of my life. And in fact, I really didn't understand, what people would eat if they ate vegetarian or vegan, or, even the reasons for it. And what happened is, actually 15 years ago, I was watching PBS, and there was some program about workers in a meat processing plant. And that's what they called it. I realize now it was a slaughterhouse, but and the workers, had all these injuries and kind of didn't have a lot of power to speak up about it because they were really dependent on the job and had to keep working even with injuries. And I was at that time I'm a psychologist. I was working in a pain management program with people with chronic pain. And so I really had kind of empathy that, wow, these are horrible working conditions. This is really unjust. I don't know if I want to support industries that would treat their workers that way. And when I made that realization, of course, then, next thought is like, wow, well, what about the animals? Have you really thought about that? Like, what must it be like for the animals that are in that process? So I was not much of a cook at the time, but the very next day I went to Barnes and Noble. I bought a vegetarian cookbook. I started as a vegetarian and made a vegetarian lasagna, and it was delicious. And I realized, wow, I just never liked really handling meat. I didn't realize it. I thought I had to eat it to be okay. So yeah, I began cooking and realizing like, wow, there's a lot of wonderful plant-based recipes. I've actually become a really good cook. And then my path evolved because as I read more and more, I understood more about the animals. And that really was what made me first go fully vegetarian and then eventually fully vegan, was just that realization of what the conditions are for animals, the pain and suffering they go through, and just realizing I don't want another living being to go through that. And, over time, my life has become better as a result. Like, I have a family history of heart disease. I realized that, maybe I am avoiding that because I am eating a healthier diet than I would have been otherwise. And on top of that, just the living by my empathy and compassion and caring for animals and the planet, as well as my own health, has been great. So as a psychologist, a few years ago, I made the transition to fully vegan, and I realized I want to help other people with this path because, not only I think part of our mental health crisis is worsened by nutrition, and that's not often addressed. I think it's also impacted by our lack of connectedness to each other and nature and animals, that, we actually are better human beings and happier human beings when we connect. And, I realized too, I read a lot of Dr. Melanie Joy's work about, why we disconnect from how we treat animals, certain animals. We love our dogs and cats, but we don't, realize that, cows and pigs and chickens have rich inner lives and are complex animals that matter too. And so I, want to make a difference for animals and the planet and for our own well-being by helping people on this journey. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Wow, and I agree with what you have said. And one of the industries where there are the most accidents is the meat industry in those slaughterhouses.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, they're horrible working conditions when you think about it. Who who would really want to work there if they had a choice? And the workers become desensitized, so as you work somewhere long enough, you learn to turn off your feelings.
Right. And on that note, that's another reason that they have a high instance, the workers do, of also taking that violence into their homes, the
Yes.
domestic violence.
Yes, that's very true. Yes. And like higher rates of addiction and, other behaviors that are challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really important that people know that, because I don't think a lot of people understand that. When they think of vegans, they're like, oh, you're just fighting for the animals. But the truth is, we're fighting for the planet, the animals, and other humans, and our health.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's all so interconnected.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I think you were talking about diet and health of mind.
Hmm.
And that's another thing. I've seen that there's some studies about how changing your diet can also help change the way you feel, the way your emotional state.
Yes. Yes. That's so true. Um, I was really intrigued by that, when I first became vegetarian and especially as I went fully vegan. And what I found, in looking at the research is that there are so many studies that show, like, first of all, that just eating more fruits and vegetables in and of itself helps mental health. That there's just countless studies about that people with higher intakes of fruits and vegetables, they have lower levels of depression, anxiety, emotional distress, higher emotional well-being, and also even positive, like very positive mood states, like a sense of meaning and purpose, has been shown to be heightened in people that eat more plants. So first there's that piece of it. And there also has been some research comparing vegetarians and vegans to omnivores who eat meat, and found that, the vegetarians and vegans did have lower rates of depression and anxiety. And then even taking it a step further, there has been some research suggesting that when people shift to a plant-based diet, there are positive changes in their reports of mood and emotional well-being as well. So there needs to be more research, but there's definitely a lot out there that supports it. And I will add, obviously, diet isn't the only factor. There's so many factors that are interconnected, but it's one piece that's often overlooked. And our standard American diet, with all the processed food and the really, really high intake of meat and dairy, does not help our emotional well-being. It puts us on a roller coaster, of ups and downs. And on top of that, processed foods and meat and dairy are shown to be inflammatory. They cause inflammation to our brain and nervous system, which triggers more depression and negative mood and, even things like anger. So, plant foods are anti-inflammatory, so they boost our neurotransmitters for the better, to have better amount of those feel-good neurotransmitters. And then we're having less of the inflammation that would bring on the more negative mood states. So it's just one really important piece that is overlooked in our society a lot, that we do have some say over. And then I guess I would add one more piece then. Not only are you eating more nutritiously for your body, but when you eat in a way that's kind to animals and the planet and your own well-being, that also has a positive impact emotionally.
Yeah, I believe it. And, and the interconnectedness of all of us is one thing that we don't really think about or make it an important part. Like when you have the blue zones, they're a
Mm,
community that are
yes,
involved with each other. They eat
yes,
healthier, mainly,
yes,
the grains and the fruits and the vegetables. And
yes,
and it's such an easy step to take right in your home. You don't have to go
yes,
buy some pill or things like that. It's so easy. You just 3 times a day or however many times a day you eat,
yes.
you just switch out what you've been eating for healthier alternatives.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned the blue zones. That was in my mind, as a good example of the whole kind of mind, body, spirit connection where they have healthy communities, they treat their elders with respect, they stay physically active, and they eat predominantly whole plant foods, in only smaller amounts of those animal-based products and no processed foods. So it's definitely a great example for us to know, like, wow, these blue zones, they live to old age and are healthy that whole time without all our kind of debilitating diseases that we have in so many of the Western cultures.
And that's the important part, that they live longer, healthier. So
Yes.
living long with diseases, that's
Not
one
fun.
thing, but
Yes.
living longer, healthier, that's a
Yes.
whole different attitude.
Yes, exactly. I'm with you. Yeah.
So now, Angela, tell us about the project that you're doing, the research for your book, upcoming book.
Yes, thank you for asking. Well, one of the things I've been fascinated about is as I've talked to people who are vegan and or plant-based, that, first, yes, there are challenges because we're eating in a way that isn't yet endorsed by society. So there are emotional challenges, both feeling really distressed when we learn about animal agriculture and then on top of it, the social challenge of eating differently and having to kind of speak up to people about our diet. And that's not easy for all of us. I for one, am an introvert. I did not find it easy to speak up to people. Some people find it easier, but for me, it was hard. Um, so at the same time, as I've talked to more and more vegans, I see so many like reporting kind of a mind, body, spirit transformation that is part of their vegan journey. And that there's sort of an awakening that happens where they realize our interconnectedness, this interconnectedness you and I have been talking about, that we're connected with all of life, and that an animal, a cow, a chicken is not that different from me. They have feelings too. And when I care for them, I'm caring for myself and the planet, and so there's this interconnectedness. And so many vegan and plant-based people are really finding a meaningful purpose through this passion, that they realize there's something I can do every day just through what I eat. And others are also changing their career and, as, you know, I guess, trying to do, and others I know are trying to do to really support this thing that they care so much about. So the book is interviewing, well, starting with a survey that I'm really inviting as many vegans as possible to complete. The survey will be open for about another month or so, or maybe 6 weeks. And the survey just asks about your emotional experiences as a vegan, both the positives, the things that have changed for the better, as well as things that have been harder. And then how have you coped with those challenges? And from that survey, I am doing a select amount of follow-up interviews to learn more deeply about people's experiences. And my hope is that the book will highlight like the positives of being vegan, because so many people that aren't vegan think it's like just deprivation or just restriction. And for most of us, once we learn the hows of being vegan and really have a strong enough why for being vegan, it can be really a joyful, abundant way of living. And so I want to share that, as well as how do people deal with the challenges in a way that is really positive and that makes this a very doable and fulfilling and purposeful lifestyle that any of us can enjoy. So that's my hope.
Yeah, and I will have a link to that survey on our social media so that people could fill that out. It's so important just to get data, just to start gathering
Yes,
data. You know,
yes,
um,
yes. The more numbers, the more representative it'll be, and the more compelling the information will be when I write the book. So I really appreciate anybody who wants to fill it out, I really appreciate that. As long as you're vegan, doesn't matter, the reason for being vegan, just that you identify as living being vegan and eating at least a vegan diet, if not a fully vegan lifestyle.
And, and this is just another way that all vegans can do something, because even, filling out surveys, I mean, you just don't have to protest or sign petitions. You can do things like this, where there are surveys to help, bring more information into light so that other people can share it and that they know, all the benefits. And
Exactly.
you said that some people might think is you're depriving yourself, but instead I found personally that, I mean, at first I was a little annoyed with the whole deceptive, scenario that put me in that place. But as I got past that, and the more I learn, and the more I feel, the more emotionally feel connected, and the more that I want to help people understand the benefits of a vegan diet, because it's
Yes.
not, it really is to help others. So I think vegans who are advocating and doing their best to promote veganism are kind of heroes, because they're trying to save the planet, help you with your
Yes.
health, awaken you
Yes.
to the reality of things,
Yes.
and of course, help the animals who have been, prisoners and subjected to such injustices.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. There's freedom in realizing that. Like, even though it's painful, it's somehow freeing when you realize something that is a truth and that you've maybe been blocking or distracting yourself from your whole life, maybe didn't even realize you were. I didn't realize I was, but there was something freeing once I took it in, because it's like, oh, this makes so much sense, and once I embraced it and realized, like, I can do this. And I want to just really add that if I can do it, anybody can, because first of all, I was not a cook. I ate microwave meals and, the same things over and over again. And now I would say I'm a pretty good cook. Like, and, even my family members who are, not vegetarian or vegan really love my vegan soups and stir fries and lasagnas. And, and I also have learned to make really good baked goods too, which was, maybe dessert isn't always the healthiest thing, but when I'm in social situations, it really helps to have a delicious vegan dessert. So yes, if I can do it, I think anybody can. It's like the learning the how, like anything that's new to us.
And that's another way to advocate for veganism, is to share vegan food with others.
Yes.
It
Yes,
really is an easy
exactly.
way, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
any final words for our viewers before we wrap it up, Angela?
Um, well, first, just I really appreciate being here, and I appreciate what you do, Nancy, for this, to raise awareness of veganism, and just, the importance that what we eat and our choices we make each day makes a big impact on us and our well-being, and it's on animals and the planet, and that interconnectedness can only do good for us ultimately when we honor that. So, doing good for others really ultimately comes back to serve, us as well. So just really holding that.
And I truly believe that, especially when you give without a purpose, like I'm going to get this from that person if I do this,
Yes.
but
Yes.
just opening yourself up to widening your circle of compassion for everything and everyone.
Yes.
And
Yes.
to remember that, that we're all here and we've been put in this planet in different forms. But what about if that would have been you? Instead of being born a human, you were born a cow,
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
or instead of being born in the situation that you were born into, you were born into one of those other countries that are suffering so much,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And when we think about that, I mean, I think that's the important thing, is to think about that. And then kind of your mindset opens up to different things.
Yeah, that awareness of appreciation and gratitude and wanting to give back.
Exactly. Thank you, Angela, for being on the
Oh,
Vegan Pulse. I appreciate what you do,
oh,
and see you again sometime soon.
sounds great. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Please like us on Facebook, check out our website, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.